Give us time to talk to them. Give us time to talk to the people we're working with on the bill, our constituents or whomever, so that we can look at the assumptions. We can see if they're right, if they're wrong. Do we need to change the language from may to shall? Do we have the support of the corner office? These are all valid concerns and ways to make better legislation. And the more knowledge we have and the sooner we have it, the better we can do. Nothing is more frustrating than sitting through a hearing and someone says, we're going to work with fiscal on this. Maybe you work with fiscal and you work it out, and maybe you don't. And if you don't, we're sure wasting everyone's time and resources. There's a better use of our resources, a better use of our time. That's what I'm doing here. I'm trying to figure out a way. And I compromise on last bill. Compromise from 2 to 1, compromise from expedite to efficiently manage. I'm working with the fiscal office, but to compromise, it has to be a two-way street. It can't be one way. I know they're coming with 48 hours. I'm not sure I can accept that. I'm going to listen, and I want to know why 48 is that much easier than 72. You know, I've heard it 1,000 times. The head of the fiscal office says, I go from day 70 and work my way backwards, right? So you go from a deadline. It's no different, and you work your way backwards, and you prioritize your time based on that. It's no different than when we were in college or high school, even now junior high, when you have a paper that's due. How often did you finish it a week ahead of time? You looked at when the deadline was, and you worked your way backwards. All I'm doing is changing that deadline to 72 hours to give ourselves a chance to work with them. They do good work. I appreciate the work they do. If they feel they aren't properly funded or they need more help, come to us, talk to us. Let's find a solution, let's work together. But for goodness sakes, don't just tell me no. We can't do that, that's inconvenience, too much work for us. Well, let's find a way forward. That's what this is about. This fiscal note has been one of the banes of my existence since I was down here, as I said. I want to find a way forward. I want to find a way to work together. I'm sorry that it has to be a debate on the floor. I would hope we could work something out privately. I had made a request, and it wasn't accepted, and that's fine. That's fine. But folks, let's give ourselves the tools. Let's make this place better. Not this is how we've done in the past. How can we do it better? And why? This is not a partisan issue, that's for sure. This is something where we can make the institution better. That's what I'm looking for today. I would appreciate your support, and I look forward to the debate that we will have on this. I have my light on. I see Senator Stinner chewing at the bit, getting ready back there to give his amendment. And so hopefully we can get done in the next 4 minutes so we can all see the swearing in of our next president of this great country. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hart. Senator Lowe would like to recognize 10 students, 2 teachers, and 5 sponsors from the students are from the 4th grade of Faith Christian School in Kearney, Nebraska. Could you please rise and be welcomed by your Nebraska legislature? Thank you for visiting. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, Senator Stinner would move to amend Senator Stinner would move to amend proposed Rules Committee change number 2. Senator, I have your proposal. I think that in part changes 24 to 48 hours and the rest of it.
Senator Stinner, you are recognized on your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd really like to start out by asking Senator Hilgers, the chairman of the committee, if he'd yield to a couple questions.
Senator Hilgers, will you yield?
Of course.
There were a large number of rules proposals submitted, with very few actually coming out to the floor. It's my understanding a number of the proposed rules were deferred for the purpose of further study. Am I correct in that?
The rules relating to the committee on committee process? And
there were rules submitted, quite a few rules. Some of those rules ended up being advanced, but most of them were held in committee, either deferred for further study or probably died of lack of. And how many were there that were deferred to study?
My memory, Senator, is that there were 2 relating to the committee on committee process that were delayed for further study, and I believe 5, give or take 1, relating to the standing committee, the number of jurisdiction, the existence of, the number of members on the standing committee. So probably I would say about 7, but I'd have to double check, plus or minus 1.
Okay, proposed rules 2 and 3 before us. To your knowledge, have these rules ever been considered? Prior rules committee changes?
The research we had reflected that they had not been, but I cannot say for certain. So over the last 10, 15 years, I do not think so, Senator.
Okay, to your knowledge, have past rules committees ever discussed the deadline for filing introducers' statements of intent?
Recent history, I believe the answer to that is no.
Okay. Are you aware of any other deadlines that have been changed or looked at in the past?
Relating to fiscal notes or generally?
So this is the first time that we've ever asked for changing from 24 hours to anything else, changing number of days for hearings, those types of things?
To my knowledge, that's correct.
Do you feel your members understand the process that goes on with the fiscal office?
The members of the Rules Committee?
Members of the Rules Committee do. They're intimate with the process that the fiscal office goes through as a bill is dropped, as it goes to agencies, as it comes back from the agencies, what triggers that bill to come back and how they try to comply with the 24-hour limit.
I believe the committee has a good understanding, yes.
Okay. I'm just wondering, and I'm wondering out loud, given what the discussion here and the little bit of confusion that I hear about the process, and I will say this, and I do still apologize to Senator Hart that I didn't have the time to really get this looked at off the mic, but after I kind of scraped Mike Calvert off the ceiling, we really sat down and said, let's look what's possible. We want to maintain this standard, and that's the standard that we want to hit. And a lot of times when you want quantity, when you want speed, you give up that standard. And I will tell you that that's a professional staff down there. They're not willing to give up that standard. And they're saying, after 25, 30 years, we'll do the 48, but you have to understand the process. The process is when you drop that bill, it doesn't come with a statement of intent. So that fiscal analyst has to look at that, understand what the intent is, send it to an agency that they have no control over. But the agency trigger, even though we have a 5-day in here, embedded in here, nobody complies with that. Those agencies, the trigger is when the hearing is listed, and it's a 7-day. Usually it's a 6-day because it takes a day to file, somebody to pick it up. That agency then starts to work on it. And in order to get it in 24 hours, they need it 3 days beforehand. That's the process. If they get it less than it, that 24 hours is in jeopardy. And I understand that sometimes even 24 hours isn't enough time to get to the committee. And it's mostly at the front end of the session, simply because that time framework gets so compressed. The agency isn't ready to handle that. Those are the things that are happening, and all at the same time, they're trying to service Appropriations Committee with budgets. Now, we've just proposed 667 bills, and I think if you look at revenue, and you look at Health and Human Services, you look at education, we have one fiscal analyst going to handle 120 requests. And you're going to say, wow, we wanted it in 72 hours. I will submit to you what this amendment's about is not only to move it back to 48 hours, but to take a look at the process and move the hearing date out to from 7 to 10. That's all part of this, managing the system to comply with an extended number of hours that you get to look at the fiscal note. Now, the other side of this argument is, under today's rules, 24 hours, you got a problem with the fiscal note? You can still go to committee. You can amend it. I've seen it amended on the floors. I've seen it amended with the appropriations chair. He fits those numbers on the fiscal note into, if we got 50 million, he'll fit those bills in and line those bills up. So your fiscal note of 500 or $1 million all of a sudden becomes 200 because that's the number that fits into the total. He wants to get that project started, that program started. So he's working with that. He's massaging it. So we always work with it. I think the staff is very, very concerned about a 72-hour situation, and it's just not workable. And I don't want to have 5 or 6 fiscal agents just throw up their hands and walk out due to frustration, and it might happen. 48, I think we got a deal. 48's manageable. 48 will keep that standard of excellence. So that's my position. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator.